Many of us, when we're children, have intuitive abilities. And because of certain things that happen in our environment, either our parents get afraid of what we're seeing, or the belief system in our family shuts it down, and then we become afraid of it and we shut it down. Our next guest went through this very thing, and we're going to talk about it. She had a spiritual awakening as an adult and embraced who she was, and is now a fabulous light worker. I hope you enjoy our conversation. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you, Michelle?
I am doing fantastic, and I am so excited to get another intuitive psychic medium, all the things that you do. So I'm so excited to talk about it and bring it to my listeners. And whenever I found out your story and I was reading your bio, I thought, oh my gosh, this is me. She's describing me because, and I found it interesting that everybody has a lot of the same life experiences and the same life story. So I want to start from the very beginning. You as a child, can you share with us what you experienced as a child and why you decided to shut down your psychic abilities?
Sure. So it's funny because people will say, like, when did you get your abilities? And you will probably agree and you'll say they've always been with you, to the point where you didn't know that they were any different than what other people were experiencing. You just kind of went through the world thinking, well, I have this, everyone has it, and you just kind of live with it. Or you don't know anything is wrong, or, wrong in quotes. But when I was a kid, I could feel things, I could hear things. Oftentimes it sounded like there was a dinner party going on in my mind that I could turn the dial up and down. And then one of the biggest things that I vividly remember was at night, I never knew what I was going to see. I never knew what I was going to wake up to. I didn't know what was going to be coming out of my closet. And that's really where a lot of this fear sort of started to come up, because every single night you go to bed and you're in the darkness and you start to see things, and they, from what I remember, were not exciting or beautiful or anything that you necessarily would want to see. And so I lived in a place of extreme fear. My poor parents dealing with trying to get their child to go to bed every night was like a battle. And it was constant, it was constant. Every night I was experiencing something, or I didn't know what I was going to experience. So I lived in just immense fear, not knowing what I was going to see. And sometimes I would see things during the daytime, but it was particularly intense at night, in that liminal in-between space, or just laying in your bed at night watching things sort of go by or stare at you.
Right. And I totally experienced the exact same thing, because I think when, after the day end, it's so quiet. That's when, and you're not really thinking about things. That's when spirit wants to visit. And of course, they don't know that you're afraid being so young. They just want to talk to you. and I find it very interesting. Okay. So, and the number one thing, yes, a lot of children with intuitiveness cannot sleep at night. So let me ask you this. Did you tell your parents? And if so, how did they react to it?
I feel like I told them sometimes, but not all the times. And it's so funny because in movies, you see kids do this and you're like yelling at the TV. You're like, just tell them, just let them know what's going on. You don't have to experience this by yourself. And like,
Absolutely.
You're doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, I remember telling my mom one morning, waking up, and I told her, I was like, Mom, I had another dream about the future. Like, I know this is going to happen. And she was fine. She was just like, oh, I used to have those too. And I was like, what? You used to have those too? And I would say little things, but they didn't have any way to help. They didn't have any tools in that space to help. And so you just kind of had to live with it.
Right.
And that's what I did, is you just had to live with it.
Now, let me ask you, did y'all go to church? Did you have a type of religion that you practice? What religion was that? Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in the Baptist church. So we
Okay.
went to church on Sundays, Bible study, all of that. And also not always a place that was always the most that you could talk about those things.
Right. Oh, I absolutely. Now, did you grow up in Texas? I know you live there in Texas now. But did you
Yes.
grow up in
Yes.
Texas? Okay, so yeah, so I was again the exact same way, and it's still difficult. I mean, it depends on who you talk to because it is such a conservative state, which and it's so interesting because you're a lot younger than I am, and I know there's more tools, but it's a actually where we live as well. There's not as many tools as what they have in different places. So, and I totally agree with you. Our parents want to help, they just don't know how to help. And then you're just going, I don't know what to do. And so, what did you do? What tool or what did you do to relax yourself before going to bed? After a while, you kind of deal with it, but what did you do?
I mean, I don't think I ever did. Like I grew up, and this is part of my like longer story as someone who dealt with a lot of anxiety, and that's a huge part of my life. But most of it was like using or having my parents there to like comfort me or to like stay in my room with me until I could go to sleep. Or the nightlight, like I always slept with a nightlight. There were just such few tools I knew how to use. And then there would be things that I might hear on like a talk show or because I was a latchkey kid. So like I would go home, make a snack and like watch show and do my homework. And I would hear things every now and then like, oh, you can try this or you can say this or you can ask for help. There would be like these little things that I would hear that I would try and implement, which is actually what led to me turning off my gifts is from hearing it somewhere else because I like didn't know how to manage it or soothe myself in any way. I was completely in the dark on that. Like I literally knew nothing.
So, what if a parent came to you now and said, you know what, our daughter is having these dreams, future dreams, and she feels people at night, cannot sleep? What would you tell them now?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I always say whenever I speak on this is I say, first, just believe them. Even if you don't believe it or you're not sure what to do, ask questions. Have them talk about what they're experiencing. What did you see? How did that make you feel? Open-ended questions to help them feel like you're going along this journey with them. Help them to feel seen and heard, even if you don't have solutions. And as we know, sometimes people are looking for solutions. They just want to talk about things. And so you can gauge what approach to take just by starting with questions, even if the questions you don't, again, like even if you're not 100% sure you believe all of this, just start asking the questions so that your child feels seen and heard. The other thing that I always recommend is reminding them that their child has the power to send things away, that they create a space of empowerment so that they don't feel like they're completely trapped in a space that is kind of encroaching upon them. They have the ability to remove things from their space. And so I let them know that like you have the power to tell things you're not welcome here.
Right.
You aren't here, or ask them questions. So trying to break it down into small things that you can do to start creating empowerment as a young little human.
And I love that because that way the parents will also feel empowered as well. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
and not be afraid of it as well. Okay, so now tell us about your spiritual awakening. You closed it down, and then you had this spiritual awakening, and as what I'm understanding, it was very intense for you. Can you walk us through it? What was it like for you?
Sure. So it actually starts kind of on a funny note where I lived in Austin at the time and several people and I was still like I would get tarot card readings, I'd had psychic readings, but like I didn't do any of that stuff. That was not for me. But I found it really interesting. And so there was this woman in Austin who several people had recommended, and I went on her website and I was like, oh my gosh, she is so expensive. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able, I don't know. That's a lot of money. And I don't even know this person. And so but I saw that she had written a book and I was like, haha, I'm going to read her book. And then I'm going to see if I really want to pay her this money. And it was this book that led to my spiritual awakening. It was like, and I think it's like in the Bible where it's like the scales fell from your eyes. Like that's literally what happened to me. I was reading this book and it was like, everything changed. Like the way I looked at the world, the way I felt, the way things I believed. It was like everything changed after reading this book. And so it was kind of a joke to me. I laugh as like it was a joke from the universe being like, you don't want to pay this girl, but we're going to actually create your spiritual awakening through this book and everything's going to change. And it did. And it started out really expansively and really beautifully. But the intensity came shortly after reading that book when my psychic senses and my ability to see other things started to come back. And I had this experience where there were these 4 men in biblical clothing that were standing at the end of my bed. And I woke up and saw them and I just started screaming. I remember, and I started screaming, no, 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 no. And I remember jumping to the side of my bed to turn on my light because in my mind, light always makes it better. So I run to the light and turn it on. I jumped out of bed and I ran into my bathroom and I just started crying because I didn't know what they were. I didn't know if they were good or bad. I didn't know why they were showing up. I was just so confused and scared. And then other things started showing up next to my bed. Things were showing up in my meditations. I felt so completely disempowered because I didn't know what to do with anything. I didn't know how to interact with it. I didn't know if it was good, if it was helpful, if it was not helpful. Should these things be? I mean, and it was just this whole, just being scared all the time and not knowing what to do with myself.
Yeah.
And that led to me finally realizing you are not a little child anymore. You can choose to show up differently. And I was also in my coach training program at this time too, which is like, nothing is a mistake. And, there's so much conversation and coaching around like empowerment and like taking responsibility and accountability for things. And so I chose that approach. I was like, this time I can choose to learn about these things. I can choose to show up differently and I need help and I'm going to go find help. And that's when I started working with mentors who could help me navigate this space from a more informed and more empowering way.
Love it. And you know what? And you said yes to it, didn't you? And it's amazing. And let me ask you, after you get started and you kind of change the way that you're thinking, your friends are not changing the way that they believe and their belief system. So did you have like an inner battle with your belief system that you grew up with?
Yeah. I mean, because, especially when we talk about like growing up in the church, like I want to say the biggest phrase that showed up for me too is like, you don't pierce behind the veil. If you open the veil too much, bad things will happen. Or like, you don't want to have too much of a good thing or anything like that, that like you exploring this could actually, cause something negative to happen. And sure, there's light and there's darkness, but over time, Michelle, I could talk about this for like 4 hours. So I'm like,
I'm with you totally because I've gone through the same experience. And, and I think it's great to talk about it because people that are going through the same thing, the battle that goes in with what you grew up with, your belief system. So, I think you're doing a fantastic job talking about it.
I know. I'm sitting here thinking, how do I say this in a concise way? Because I could talk about this for hours. Right. But I will say, like, there was a lot of like self-hate I had towards myself because of how I was raised. Right. And not just in the spiritual world, but about exploring anything outside of what I was originally taught. And ultimately what you'll find over time is that love is the most powerful frequency and energy that you can work within. And organized religion has a lot of love and it's space for you to explore and to learn. It also has some fear that is also kept people within the boundaries of that space as well. And so it's for you to discern what feels right for you and where you're going in life and your larger journey. So for me, when I was going through this, there were some programs and ways of thinking that I wrestled with and had to, and this doesn't happen overnight. I find a lot of, and Michelle, you probably experience this too, where it's like a lot of clients are like, I want to fix this next month or tomorrow. I want this to happen now. My journey is years.
Yes.
It's 2023 right now. This started in 2017. I worked alone privately, just trying to understand myself for at least 2 years. 2 years.
Right.
Before I ever got in front of groups to learn how to do this stuff. I didn't go in saying, I'm going to be a psychic and I'm going to work with energy. And I was like, I can't even, the fact that I'm doing what I do right now would blow my mind 5 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever. I was trying to understand myself first, and I had to do a lot of inner work and shadow work and healing in order for me to even get to a place where I could explore those gifts of mine. So I want to like preface a lot of this with like, don't look at where I'm at and think that you should be there today. Maybe you are,
Yeah.
But know that like, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And me unraveling some of these unhelpful programs or things in my life that just needed to fall away. And I'm sitting here thinking, you were talking about relationships and friends, and I didn't even talk about that too either. But I can talk about friends. But yeah, it does as you grow. Like my friends in Austin. So the whole time I was in Austin, I moved to Houston. I live in Houston right now. I moved to Houston right before COVID. And I started publicly coming out with this side of myself more when I moved to Houston. All of my friends in Austin were like, what do you do now? Why didn't you talk about this? Like they had no idea.
Yeah.
And it was because my journey was so private. I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know like who to talk to about it. And while some people were able to continue to stay in my life, some people naturally just kind of fell away because our growth trajectories just started to, move in different directions. And it wasn't anything, dramatic or intense. We just started growing apart because where I was going and where they were going were just in two different directions.
And, I totally agree that it does take several years because, you've got to embrace who you truly are. And that's that psychic, the sensitivity, the intuitiveness, the empath, that's all a part of you. I actually went to a shaman and she said, Michelle, there is a reason why you grew up in Texas and why you are still there. and so when you were talking, I thought, you know what? Our belief systems are there for a reason. Everybody is in different places. You've just got to know when to embrace it and when it's your time. And you've got spirit team. You've got God right there helping you through each step and not to be afraid of it. Because the number one thing I hear from a lot of clients is I'm afraid of it. And I said, that's embracing yourself. That is you. That is your soul that's speaking. And so it is a whole different concept. And I love that your Austin friends probably really accepted it and going, come on, Lindsay, why didn't you let us be a part of it?
I know. Well, and they don't really understand it either, but they're like so happy to just like be along the journey, and like I'll read cards for them. Like we'll go over to like a friend's house and I go visit, and I'll read cards for them. It was so funny because one of my friends, she doesn't really believe in any of this, and then I predicted that she was going to lose her job and like all this stuff, and like a month later she was like, Lindsay, everything you said in that card reading at my house was right. And I was like, I mean, I'm just reading the energy of what comes through. Like, I don't know. Yeah. So it is funny. That's why it's when I'll get a question sometimes, like, what do you do with the people who don't believe? And, for you and I, we're at a place now where it's like, if you only knew the things that I have seen, I don't doubt it anymore because so many things have unfolded to really show us that this is something that is really just a part of the world, and it's a part of who we are. And it's the world can be a magical place.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and talk about your training. So you went through all of this training once you embraced it, once you found your, because I think that is so important. The part of the work is you've got to figure out who you are because you're going to be triggered through clients. If you don't, we get that emotion. So what kind of training did you go through and how did you know where you wanted to go?
Yeah, honestly, I would say for the first couple of years, well, and like I said, the first couple of years was me working on myself and understanding myself. So it was like I worked with not just coaches, but people who understood that realm of space. So they were looking through my work through that lens.
Mhm.
And then I was also trying to understand my gifts. So the different healers and mentors, and intuitives that I worked with, they could see me from that place, or they were already very gifted themselves and could, like, what I needed was I just needed somebody to see me and work directly with me. I wasn't ready for group classes at that time because I didn't even understand me. And so that time was spent working one-on-one with people, really trying to just understand myself. Then a friend of mine recommended this one teacher, and I'm very skeptical. Like, the spiritual world is like the Wild West. I'm a Scorpio. I'm very skeptical before I work with anyone, and I typically don't want to work with a lot of people. So she recommended this person, and I was like, I don't know. And I followed her on Instagram for a couple of weeks, and I wanted to get to know her better before I ever opted in. But she had these group classes, and it was called it was a intuitive reader foundations. I was like, I'm not an intuitive reader, but I'm gonna start developing my gifts. I need to start doing this with other people. I need to really get out there more. I'm feeling better in my abilities. And through that was truly that was the moment when I was like, oh, I can do this. Like, I can actually do this because I'm working with other people. I'm seeing how other people are reading and translating different modalities and stuff. And I'm like, I mean, and that's the thing is, like, you look back now and you're like, of course I could do this. Of course I could
Right.
do this. But I didn't have the confidence yet to do it. And so I went through intuitive reader foundations. I've gone through special topics. I've done apprenticeships. I've done energy, certifications, like all these things, because you start to want to learn. You kind of find yourself being pulled in a direction that will help you uncover your gifts a little bit more. So for me, it was like the intuitive topics is what I really focused on for a while. And then I found myself being pulled to energy work. And so I was like, let me see how this works. I want to understand energetics more. And so you go through these sort of experiences and periods of of time where something feels really pertinent for you to learn at the time. And then you put that away and maybe something else calls to you and you kind of evolve and learn over time. And that's kind of what happened to me.
So what kind of services do you offer? So now we want to
No,
know what you do.
So, and that's what happens. And Michelle, you and I were talking about this before we got on about how, as you work in this space, you start to learn all these different things. And it can be really hard to like narrow down and say, what exactly do I do? My biggest space that I work in right now is one-on-one coaching and mentorship. And I call it spiritual coaching and mentorship because people come to me for several main areas. One is what I was going through. They want someone to see them and help them develop their abilities and gifts in a very like laser focused and tailored way. So I offer that. Or some people are looking for a coach and mentor who can look at things through that spiritual lens, who can take their gifts and infuse them into the conversation of our sessions. And then I also work with business owners who also want that take as they're scaling their business or needing some accountability and support. So I do the one-on-one coaching and mentorship. I also offer some consulting services on the side as well. I come from corporate America, so my last role was in consulting at a firm. So like I also love that space. Yeah. And then I also offer single sessions. So for people who aren't quite ready for like a longer term commitment, and I do offer psychic readings, energy work, and then I do one of the really fun ones, especially any Dolores Cannon friends out here, I do beyond quantum healing hypnosis, and those are really powerful sessions. So the one-on-one coaching and then the single sessions. I also teach, like right now I'm doing a small group psychic and intuitive development 8-week program that we actually just started yesterday. So that'll be really fun. So I offer group programs a couple times a year at the most. But the one-on-one container has been my main place where I work with people.
So yeah, is there enough time of the day for you to do everything? Do you eat
I know.
too?
Well, I know. I know. I'm wondering about that today myself, actually. No, it does. And that's the thing, is you're constantly growing and evolving in what you do, because I used to only offer coaching. And then I went through a time where I was only offering single sessions, because, and I guess I should add too, in the one-on-one container, what makes it so fun is we can take all of the work I do in my single sessions and put them into the one-on-one container. So all of my one-on-one clients receive hypnosis if they want it. They receive like psychic readings. I call it like an all-inclusive approach to make sure that you have the greatest results. But yeah, it's been an interesting dynamic to infuse those different pieces into my day, but it's been really rewarding. And I have to set really good energetic boundaries so that I can rest and show up in my highest frequency way that I can.
Absolutely. Boundaries. And you got to learn that too once you get into this business, because the journey is so intoxicating, because you're so excited that you have found yourself and you're on the right pathway, but you've got to watch your energy or it will get sucked dry. So totally agree.
Yes.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to kind of switch now. I'm going to ask you for inspiration on any front. So if somebody really needs to be inspired, what would you tell them?
Oh, if they need to be, okay. So from my lens, I guess if you need to be inspired, I would say get quiet with yourself and ask for inspiration, ask for help, ask for what you need and see what unfolds. If you need a sign, ask for a sign. One of the things that I say over and over again is that there's this idea of non-interference, and our guides and our angels are waiting for us to ask them for help. And so let them show up for you. See what magic is possible in the world when you ask for help and when you let your guides and your angels show up for you.
Oh, absolutely. And you have to, I do tell my clients as well that you have to ask or they will not come, because you've got that free will. And then the most important thing is listen. You've got to listen, because a lot of times I don't like the answer.
I know. Well, and I love, I was reading this book on signs by Laura Lynn Jackson. I love her. And she cracked me up. There's this part in her book where she's like, if you only knew how hard they were working to show you these signs, and then you don't see them.
I know, just look, it's just a very subtle, that type of thing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you ready for the last question?
I'm so excited.
Right,
I can't wait for this.
I started spinning it and I forgot to put it on stage. Here we go.
Let's see what we get.
Oh. Since you are the future reader, you read people's futures. Now you get to read your own, or think about where you want to be 5 years from now and why.
Yes. 5 years from now, I want to actually, it's funny, this is a goal I've recently set for myself. 5 years from now, I want to be doing more speaking engagements in front of people and sharing more of this work. That's something that is on my, I don't have a vision board, but that is part of my vision.
Yeah.
I know. I'm like, I wish I had one.
You know what? I do vision boards too, but a lot of times, I don't want to say I get disappointed, but it changes, as our choices. It may be different in a month from now than 5 years from now, because I'll be a completely different person. But no, I love that you still have to have a vision, but no, I agree. I don't have a vision board as well. So you're not alone.
Oh, good,
Yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah. I love doing them as well. So, where can they reach you, Lindsay?
Sure. So I have a website, and will you be able to add my links to this podcast as well?
Absolutely.
Because I chose the most confusing way to spell things. But my website is lindsay-leigh.com, and it's LINDSAY I'm also on Instagram at Lindsay Leigh Official. Come follow me. I'm most active on Instagram, I would say, over anything, but those are the two main ways that you can get in touch with me, book sessions, and just reach out and say hi.
Awesome. And what I want to kind of summarize is remember to embrace yourself. If you got that intuitiveness and you feel called from spirit to actually work with your spirit team, listen and really embrace yourself. Just like what Lindsay was saying, go to somebody, go to a coach that can help you along the way because it's very difficult to be isolated and alone when you go through this. So make sure that you reach out to somebody like Lindsay that you feel like, she would be a superb coach for you, wherever you're being drawn to. All right. I will see everybody next week. And Lindsay, thank you so much for your spiritual wisdom, my dear.
Thank you. This is great.
Thanks.